Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I am an aging lion. And there is an African proverb that says, if the lions don't tell their stories, the hunters will get all the credit. I think it's only fair to you that I should let some of you know a little bit about my background before I have some things to say to you. And I hope as I say them, you will not walk out. You will stay here and hear me to the end. I am an only child. My parents were live-in domestic household servants. Father had a 4th grade education, mother 8th grade education. When I was born, I lived with them till about the age of 6 in the servants' quarters of the place where they worked. About the age of 6, my parents, principally my mother, decided that they should put me in a boarding school, a Catholic boarding school that was run and operated by the Order of the Sacred Heart. So I was raised from the age of 6 and 14 by Irish nuns. Every other day, the nuns said to me in one form or another, "Be a good boy, Master Jones. We love you. God loves you. And you are beautiful. We love you. God loves you, and you are beautiful." And then during one of those interim times when I visited my parents when I was not, it was during the summer, when I was about 10 or 11 years old, in a place on the seashore in Atlantic City, near Atlantic City. I rode a bike out from the compound where my parents worked for the Lippincott family, famous family in Philadelphia. I borrowed a bike to go and ride out, to go to a candy store, buy some candy. And I found myself quickly surrounded by, I was about, as I say, 10 or 11 years old. I found myself quickly surrounded by 6 maybe white boys, some riding someone foot. And they began to shout at me things that I had never heard while I was in the boarding school. They said to me, "Nigger, a monkey, Sambo, gorilla, steal that bike, where you going?" And I was frightened. I had never heard anybody say to me like that. So I rushed back to where my mother was working, and I was going into the kitchen. I'm crying, and I'm scared, and I'm saying, and I tell my mother what happened. And my mother says, "Stop that crying." I said, "Mama," she says, "Come over here to look in this mirror." So I thought I would receive a little more warmth, and she seemed to have a kind of harsh response. She said, "Come and look in that mirror, and what do you see?" So I'm crying, and I say, "Mama, I see you, and I see me." She says, "No, but tell me, what do you see?" And I'm confused, and I say, Mama, I see you, I see me. She says, no, what you see is the most beautiful thing that God has created. Don't you pay no mind what those boys said to me. God loves you, Mama loves you, and you are beautiful. You hear me? Now, I'm going to be 87 years old in January, God willing, but you know that stays like a steel rod up in my spine. You hear what I said? I am especially delighted to be here because I feel a special bond. I don't know whether you missed what I said to you, that I was raised from 6 to 14 by Irish Catholic nuns. So you know it's like coming home when I can come to Conrad Hilton. And I know their commitment. The fierce urgency of now resetting our moral compass, I just have to call some things out to you. The night of November 9th to November 10th, 1938, an incident known as Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, Nazis in Germany torched synagogues, vandalized Jewish homes, schools, and businesses, and killed close to 100 Jews. Kristallnacht, August 11th, 2017. So-called alt-right white men and women marched at night carrying lighted torches in Charlottesville, Virginia, chanting, "Jews will not replace us." This is 79 years after Kristallnacht. 154 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, and after 620,000 dead during our Civil War, the nation is still divided over the issue as to whether statues and monuments to those who led our nation in treasonous insurrection against our national government to preserve and extend the institution of slavery should be commemorated and honored. Gun violence is at an all-time high. However, to quote Tom Friedman in a recent column in the New York Times, quote, "We will turn the world upside down to track down the last Islamic State fighter in Syria, deploying B-52s, cruise missiles, F-15s, F-22s, F-35s, and U-2s. We will ask our best young men and women to make the ultimate sacrifice to kill or capture every last terrorist." And how many Americans has the Islamic State killed in the Middle East? I forget it. Is it 15 or 20? Friedman continues, and our president never stops telling us that when it comes to ISIS, defeat is not an option. Mercy is not on the menu, and he is so tough, he even has a defense secretary named Mad Dog. As you know, it's all over. Mass shootings in Las Vegas, 58 gun deaths in one day. But in Chicago, 58 people were killed in a span of 28 days, spanning from September 29th to 2 days before the Las Vegas attack. In Baltimore, there were 58 gun deaths in 68 days. In Houston, 58 gun deaths in 118 days. In St. Louis, 58 gun deaths in 70 days. In Los Angeles, 58 deaths in 125 days, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Liberation theology is the central text of the theology of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and several other ministers of his generation. The text for liberation theology can be found in chapter 4 of Luke's Gospel, where Jesus outlines the purpose of his ministry. Quote, Jesus says, "My mission is to eradicate poverty and to bring about freedom and the liberation of the oppressed." Now, years ago, Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago was pastored by a Reverend Jeremiah Wright. It was during a time when Senator Barack Obama was running as candidate for president of the United States. In his now famous sermon in 2003, Jeremiah Wright has said, quote, "Black people's troubles are a result of racism that still exists in America, crying out, no, 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 not God bless America, God damn America." That's in the Bible, for killing innocent people, close quote, he said. The disparity between the number of incidents where lethal force is chosen as the first option instead of the last in effecting an arrest of an African-American suspect, in contrast to the first option in seeking to arrest a white suspect, is between 20 to 1. Young black males in recent years were at a far greater risk of being shot dead by police than their white counterparts, 21 times greater, according to a ProPublica analysis, federally collected data on fatal police shootings. Now, I know when I speak some places and I recite this, and they say, oh, but what about the black on black gun violence in Chicago? That is true. Black on black gun violence in Chicago and Oakland is a major issue we have to deal with. My beloved brother would say, when I say my beloved brother, I'm speaking about Martin Luther King Jr. He would say, quote, "On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it expedient? And then expedience comes along and asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? Conscience asks the question, is it right?" He continues, "There comes a time when one must take the position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But he must do it because conscience tells him it is right. I believe only that there is a need, I believe today that there is a need for all people of goodwill to come with a massive act of conscience. So again, I ask, tell me, where is the moral compass of America today?" So how do we reset the compass? You reset the compass by the only thing I know when I was taught by those beloved Catholic nuns who taught me. I didn't know when Master Jones that there was anything other than right or wrong. I mean, I didn't know it was anything about something being a little bit right or a little bit wrong. I just knew something, we were taught something that's either right or wrong. You understand? I mean, and then I saw a lot of us got very educated, and I learned something about the doctrine of moral relativity. What's that? Moral relativity. Oh, really? Something is a little bit right, a little bit wrong. Oh, really? Well, you know, I've read a lot of philosophy and I've read a lot of things. So we are at a crossroads, my friend. And so I'm a little bit caught between not wanting to preach to the choir and at the same time wanting to express a necessary moral indignation. I want us to stop and pause and reflect. You know, at the March on Washington, the speaker who spoke immediately before Martin Luther King Jr. celebrated speech was Rabbi Joachim Prinz, president of the American Jewish Congress. And in his speech, among other things, he said, "When I was a rabbi in Berlin, in Hitler, Germany, I remember many things. I remembered the hate, the bigotry. I remembered what happened earlier in Kristallnacht. But the thing that I most remembered," he said, "was the silence of the good people." the thing that I most remember was the silence of the good people. We have to no longer be silent. We have to set our moral compass to be constructively and morally as loud as we can be. Now, you know, one of the things I learned in working with the civil rights movement is that Dr. King, he was brilliant. He knew that no matter how compelling on the merits any of the case of racial segregation was, there was no way that 12% of the population, then 1960, April 28th, 1960, there's no way that 12% of the population, Negroes as we referred to then, was going to impose that on 88% of the population. It wasn't going to happen. So we would be attacked by what I call the black crazies on the left, who wanted to counsel us to get guns and violence. You know, that's the only thing the white man understands. You got to get a rifle and so forth. You know, and so we knew that's a counseling for political suicide. 12% of the population is going to try to overturn 88%. I don't think so. Aside from the fact that he was philosophically, spiritually, politically committed to nonviolence. So we understood that there would be a fundamental transformation in America when the 88%, the majority of the white people came to understand that it was in its self-interest that this nonsense of racial segregation, and that it was in its self-interest. And that's exactly what his I Have a Dream speech was. It was a call to the conscience of America. The use of the concept of I have a dream was spoken in the future tense. I have a dream that one day that my 4 children will, in the future tense, be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. So that the resetting of the moral compass requires not only that we look at resetting the compass, but we also look at resetting the compass within the parameters of the history of the exercise and acquisition of power in the United States. Just to have a moral point of view without understanding the acquisition and use of power is not helpful. So I always like to remind people that on August 3rd, 1857, Frederick Douglass said, "Let me give you a word of the philosophy of reform. The whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions yet made to our august claims have been born of earnest struggle. This conflict has been exciting, agitating, all-absorbing," talking about the struggle against slavery. "If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its mighty many waters. This struggle may be a moral one or it may be a physical one. And it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power can seize nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them, and these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. In the light of these ideas, Negroes will be hunted at the north and south and held and flogged," and he goes on. Just a word about the meaning and philosophy of power. So if you couple my call that we pause and reset our moral compass, and we do it against the background of certain things which I have recited, which are in this world, not in an altered universe, certain things which I recited to you earlier. We cannot sit idly by. We have to do something. And I am pleased that you've given me this opportunity to come and speak to you. I'm hesitant in the way in which I wanted to speak to you because I didn't want to come and sound like I'm trying to preach to you. But as I said, when you get to be going on 87, and you want to be sure that as an aging lion, I get a chance to tell my story so that the hunters don't get all the credit. Thank you for allowing me to share this podium today with others and this room with you. God bless you, and thank you, the Conrad Hilton Foundation.